Hi, hello and welcome back to F1 Challenge VB. My name is Mephisto and our epic journey through the history of Formula 1 continues today with the 10th and final round of the 1960 season, the United States Grand Prix. It was held on the 20th of November, it had 23 entries, all of them took part in the race with 7 of them ending up retiring. The race consisted of 75 laps completed in 2 hours, 28 minutes and 52 seconds. Stirling Moss qualified on pole with Brabham in 2nd, Gurney 3rd, Bonnier 4th, Clark 5th and John Surtees started from 6th. Moss drove a fantastic race to win the US Grand Prix. Ireland finished in 2nd, 38 seconds later. McLaren ended the race in 3rd, he was 52 seconds behind. Brabham crossed the line in 4th, he was 1 lap down. Bonnier came home in 5th, he was also 1 lap down. And Phil Hill rounded off the top 6, he was 1 lap down as well. Jack Brabham was the fastest man of the race, posting a lap time of 1 minute 56.3 seconds. Here we are at the Riverside International Speedway for this year's United States Grand Prix, where a lap starts off with a short sprint down into turn 1, a fast left-hander. Turn 2 is next a fast right-hander, which brings us into a series of S's. Pay attention through here as you might have to feather the throttle. Next we come into turn 6, a tight 180-degree right-hand corner. Careful not to use too much power through the corner as the car likes to oversteer through here. Turn 7 is next, a tight 180-degree left-hand corner. Once again, mind the throttle coming through here. You don't want to use too much of it. Turn 8 is much the same as the previous 2 corners, with the exception that it tightens a bit more than the previous 2. Therefore, you have to be even more careful with power application. This brings us onto the longest straight on the circuit, which ends with a long 180-degree banked right-hand corner. This itself brings us back around onto the main straight, and that is a lap around the Riverside International Speedway. And here we are in qualifying, coming around to set our first time of 2 minutes 2.140. Not a very good qualifying time, but hopefully we can improve on that. I did in fact improve, but only a little bit. 2 minutes 1.675, and after this I kind of gave up because I couldn't go any faster. And here are the previous Grand Prix winners. Actually, previous Grand Prix winner, singular, that was Andy Higgs, last in the previous season. So hopefully we'll see another good race here today, but we'll see, I guess. The weather is quite nice today, so hopefully it will stay that way all the way to the end. And here we have the grid walk, and we see McLaren starting from pole with Tony Brooks in 2nd, Lucien Bianchi 3rd, 4th is Phil Hill, and Ines Ireland 5th, with Wolfgang von Trips rounding off the top 6. Then we have Jack Brabham in 7th, Henry Taylor in 8th, Chuck Day is in 9th, followed by Jim Clark in 10th, Richie Ginther finds himself in 11th, followed by Gendebian in 12th, Stirling Moss 13th, 14th is Cliff Allison, followed by John Surtees in 15th, 16th is Joe Bonnier, 17th Trintignant, Willie Mays is in 18th, 19th is Ronald Flockhart, followed by Andy Higgs in 20th, and bringing up the rear we have Graham Hill in 21st and Dan Gurney in 22nd. So that is the grid lineup for today's race. Once again, I hope it will be a good race. I would like to score some points, obviously, but that will going to be seen if we can do it. And we are off for the final round of the season, United States Grand Prix, and I immediately lose a position, but I get it back almost as quickly as I lost it, as we now come into turn 1. And once again I lose a position to Graham Hill. We are down in 20th once again. Ronald Flockhart is right behind me, and he's looking for a pass. I'm trying to keep him behind, although I don't know for how long I will be, as we're coming through these S's. Quite tricky to feather the throttle just right to come through these, but it's doable as we now come through into turn 6. And here is a replay of the start. A bit of a wheel spin, but it's okay. I managed to keep the car on the track and out of any trouble, which is very, very nice. As we come through turn 1 there, battling with Graham Hill. He, unfortunately for us, he won that battle, but maybe we can still catch him at some point as we move further along on lap 1 here. We are in 19th, Ronald Flockhart is in front of us. Dan Gurney is just about to overtake us here a bit later on the opening lap. So we drop down into 20th, and Debian is behind us, some 3 seconds behind. Hopefully we can pull away from him, although I'm not sure if we can do it. And as we start lap 2 here, we move back up into 19th. I think someone retired, but I'm not entirely sure. Still on lap 2, I lose control coming through this left-hander, and we just got passed by one of the Yeoman Credit Racings. And this is Phil Hill coming around, and something happens. He flips his car upside down and then falls off the map, and actually he doesn't retire, he will just not classify. Starting lap 3, and we gain 2 more positions, or 1 position, I'm not entirely sure. Actually, here is Willie Maurice coming into the pits to retire. Apparently he has a problem with his gearbox, so that's the end of his race for today, unfortunately for him. As we now move on to lap 6, Dan Gurney is also out of the Grand Prix, and we move up into 17th. Gandibin is 17.5 seconds up the road, and he's pulling away slowly. And here is a replay of Dan Gurney coming through this left-hander. He goes wide into the sand there and retires from the race. And this is Lucien Bianchi in his yellow Cooper for the Belgian national team. He turns a bit too much, hits one of those tires at the side of the road and flips upside down, and that's the end of his race. And now on lap 9, Graham Hill has retired from the race, so we will move up into 17th eventually. And we have a replay of Graham Hill, who hits one of those tires, loses one of his front wheels, and he is also out of the Grand Prix. As we now move on to lap 15th, and Gandebian is now out of the race as well. We move into 16th. Here's a replay of Gandebian coming through this left-hander. Once again he turns in a bit too much. He hits one of those tires in the road, at the side of the road, loses one of his wheels, and he is also out of the Grand Prix. As we come now on lap 17, go a bit wide there, and we now have Richie Ginther coming into the pits to retire. Not entirely sure why, but he did retire after this, so that's that. Now moving on to lap 22, and Cliff Allison is out of the Grand Prix. At this point I was 2 laps behind the leaders, and here is a replay of Cliff Allison, who loses his brakes coming through the final corner here. He hits the arm code there and hits a few of the spectators, probably killing some of them. And here is John Surtees coming into the pits to retire. Once again, I'm not quite sure why, but he did in fact retire after this. As we move further along now on lap 23, this was my final lap, as we see Bruce McLaren crossing the line to take the win, and we have a few replays before that. This is Wolfgang von Trips coming around to set the fastest lap of the race, a 150 something, I'm not quite sure. Regardless, very shortly after setting the fastest lap, he comes around this left-hander, hits one of the tires at the side of the road, loses both of his front wheels, and he's out of the race. And we now have a replay of Bruce McLaren coming around to win the United States Grand Prix. Absolutely fantastic race for him, very well done. So congratulations to Bruce McLaren for his phenomenal race. And here we are coming around to finish our race as well. And well, could have been better, could have been worse, I guess. And here we have the results. McLaren wins, Ireland second, Brabham third, fourth is Moss, fifth Clark, and Joe Bonnier is sixth. So, and Wolfgang von Trips set the fastest lap of 1 minute 50. And here are the retirements, a number of them, but not as much as we've seen in the previous season, so that's actually quite good, I would say. And at least we didn't retire again as we did in the past 2 races, so we managed to finish, which is quite good, I say. But anyway, here are the career statistics, and this was Andy's 95th Grand Prix. His best start is from first, has 5 pole positions, has set 15 fastest laps. His best finishes in first, has completed 67 races, 55 of them in the points, has won 33 Grand Prix, 4 at the Indianapolis 500, 6 in Monaco, has 7 championships under his belt, has scored a total of 370 points, has 28 retirements, has experienced 2,195 out of 2,631 laps, has 6 bronze trophies, 9 silver trophies, 33 gold trophies, and as an extension, 33 podiums. And here is one final look at the championship standings. Bruce McLaren wins the 1960 Drivers' Championship with 26 points, and I need to make a little bit of a correction. The past couple of races I kept saying that there were as many winners as there were Grand Prix, which is kind of not true. Bruce McLaren actually won 2, now 3 of the races, so there are actually 7 different people who won during the season. I guess I need a new brain. Anyway, Sterling Moss finished the season in 2nd with Ireland in 3rd, Ginther 4th, Von Trips 6th, and Phil Hill and Tony Brooks sharing 6th. Andy Higgs finishes the season in 11th, so outside of the top 10, which is kind of disappointing, but hey, what can you do? We didn't have a very competitive car this season. The last person to score points is Lucien Bianchi down in 20th, and Dan Gurney ends the season in 22nd. So those were the drivers. Let's move on to the constructors, and Ferrari win the Constructors' Championship. They did this, I think, after Portugal, if I remember correctly. Cooper finished the season in 2nd, Team Lotus are 3rd, 4th, Rob Walker Racing Team, Owen Racing Organization finish in 5th, 6th, Yeoman Credit Racing, Aston Martin 7th, and the final team to score points is the Belgian national team with 3 points in 9th, Scarab F1 being the only team not to score any points this season. So that was the United States Grand Prix. Once again, a pretty good race, I would say, well, except for Andy, who once again failed to score any points. Actually, we didn't score too many points during the entire season, but that's alright. I mean, it was very fun to finally have a proper race, to a proper season where people finished races where we actually struggled, where, well, we weren't in the most competitive car of the season, quite frankly. And even so, we did a lot better than the real Aston Martin did in 1960, so we still did pretty well, I would say. But that is the end of the 1960 season. Again, disappointing for Andy, especially since we haven't scored many points, but hopefully things will change next season. Speaking of which, let's take a look at the 1961 team and driver changes, and let's start with Ferrari. Phil Hill and Ginther will continue driving for the Italian concern, with Belgian Meurice and British Allison pulling out of the sport, whilst Wolfgang von Trips' future in the team is under question. There is rumor that Enzo would like to bring Higgs back into the team, although nothing has been confirmed yet. Brabham and McLaren will continue to drive for Cooper. Graham Hill is the only driver that will continue driving for Owen Racing, with Dan Gurney and Joe Bonnier moving on to the reinstated Porsche team. Hill will be joined by Tony Brooks, who is leaving Yeoman Credit Racing. Aston Martin will be absent from the grid next season. As such, Higgs' future is uncertain at the moment. As mentioned earlier, Mr. Enzo Ferrari is considering bringing Higgs back into the Italian team. However, he did receive other offers as well, among them a chance to return to Lotus, which he might choose, seeing that Lotus are a British team. The Lotus team will have Jim Clark and Ines Ireland behind the wheel, with Surtees joining Yeoman Credit Racing and Flockhart leaving Formula 1. If Higgs will join Lotus, most likely he will be replacing Ines Ireland. Moving on, Sterling Moss will continue to drive for Rob Walker in 1961. Trintignant will leave his current seat at Scuderia Centro Sud for the new Scuderia Serenissima. His seat will be taken up by Italian Lorenzo Bandini. Surtees won't be driving alone for Yeoman Credit Racing. He will be joined by Roy Salvadori, who is returning to Formula 1 after a short absence. Gandebian and Taylor are rumored to retire next season. And finally, we have a few new teams joining us on the grid next season. These are H&L Motors, which will be driven by rookie Jackie Lewis, Écurie Marsbergen, driven by Carol Godin de Beaufort, Camorandi International, which will be driven by returning driver Maston Gregory, and the last team to join us next season is Scuderia Sant'Ambreus. Their driver will be Italian Giancarlo Baghetti. So those are the team and driver changes for the next season. Quite exciting to see what will happen. Quite exciting to see where Andy Higgs will land next season, although I kind of know because I've seen the poll results already, but let's just keep the mystery going, shall we? Speaking of which, once this video goes live, I will give you guys a few more hours to vote for next season's theme if you haven't done so already, so make sure to check the link in the description, which will take you to the straw poll where you can cast your vote. With all of that said, that's it for this video and for this season. Once again, a very nice season. Looking forward to the next season as well, especially since there are a couple of changes coming in. One of them concerning the scoring system. Yes, there are some changes coming to the scoring system again, and actually there's going to be another change in 1962 as well. Aside from that, there is going to be a very big change coming in 1961 regarding engines, a change which was very controversial at the time, but I'll talk about that a bit more at the opening round. So yeah, once again, don't forget to vote for next season's team. Link is in the description. I also have a second channel where I will be playing all sorts of different games. At the moment, I'm doing a playthrough of Diablo 2 and IL-2 Thermovic 1946. So if you're interested in any of those, there will be a link in the description to that as well. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, stay sharp.